Yeah, I'll go ahead and start it off, Nick. Just kind of an open assessment where we're at. I think our depth, our talent is really good. We've stayed healthy thus far for the most part through camp, which is huge. Just feel like we have depth overall, at every position where the last couple of years we haven't. I think just starting with our corners, I think we've improved there. Some of the guys that have jumped out to me, Deron Lowe, I think is playing really well. I think he's come a long way. He's added 20 pounds since he got here this spring. I think he has a chance to be a difference maker for us back there. Obviously, Chris Megason and Marcus, I think, have had some pretty good practices as well, and some of those young guys coming along as well. I've been really pleased with. Safety-wise, I think our depth is really strong. Obviously, Scruggs has played a lot of snaps. Said Stone's played a lot of snaps. Quentin Reese played a lot of snaps last year, but then other guys like Rocket Rahimi, guys that were really excited about and what they can bring to the table. D-line is probably our deepest group. Really, really talented up front. Excited about the different ways Coach Aldridge can get those guys on the field. And then I think our linebackers, adding Story Jackson to that room has really increased. Rashad Harding, Ahmad Walker's had a really good fall camp. So Tyron Dupree, him and Carl Poole both coming back from labrum surgery, both doing really well. So just excited overall with the depth that we have. I think our kids are running the ball pretty hard. I think Coach Burns has done a really good job kind of being our takeaway coach and making it a point of emphasis, and our kids have bought into that mentality. So pleased with where we're at, but like always, we have a lot of things we still got to get cleaned up at this point.
Coach, your defense went from, I think, 28 points allowed in year one to 20 points last year and cut the yardage back to like 318 or something like that. How do you explain that kind of improvement, and is there still room for improvement this year, and can you improve on those numbers even more?
Well, I definitely think there's still room for improvement. I think first off, you have to look at credit to our kids. The players are the ones that make the plays and buying into our system and the development of those guys, one, on the football field, but probably more importantly off the football field in the weight room. Some of those areas, Coach Dom and his strength staff, I think, have done a phenomenal job just changing the bodies of kids as they've come in here, over that 2 to 3 year process we've been here now. The second thing I think is, we probably don't give Coach Freeze enough credit for how we've managed some of those games, especially when we haven't had as much depth. We've been able to play, sound, solid defense and make teams earn the field, not give up explosive plays, but complementary football. Being able to run the football in some of those games and eat up clock, I think, was huge. I think our strength of schedule this year is much tougher. I think we're going to play a lot better offenses than what we faced last year. I think early in the season last year, we were still very much a work in progress. We had Scruggs started the year for us at our nickel strong safety position. Ended up playing the back half of the year at Rover. Quentin Reese came in and helped at that position. So we were still trying to figure out who we were and where guys were going to be best fitted to make plays. Where I think at this point we're much more ahead of where we were last year in that aspect. So, I think the continued development of our guys, just situational awareness, developing their football IQ and acumen is really going to be big for us in the next couple of weeks as we head into the season.
Where would you say you are right now with, I know Javon's been a little dinged up, I guess the hamstring, but if it were to start now, would you say Javon's probably at that Rover spot, or how would you kind of size up the back end?
Well, honestly, I think we have two great guys at that spot, and I think they're both going to play a lot of snaps. Quentin Reese didn't start a lot of games last year, but he played more snaps than Treadwell in some of those games. So, I think part of being successful as a program is developing a culture where it's a team over me, and I don't think that's easy for these guys nowadays, where social media and everything else in the world tells them it's all about them. And I think for the most part we have a very humble group of young men that have put this program and our defense in front of their needs. And the thing that we've talked to them about, and I've seen everywhere I've been, when guys do that, we can all reap the reward and the success. And so my plan, last year Scruggs had to play a lot of snaps because, we might not have had the same caliber guy playing behind him, but his body's taken a lot of hits over the years too. And so having a guy like Rocket that can play there, Scruggs can play multiple positions. I mean, at free safety, Sedstone, Quentin Reese, are both going to be able to play a lot of snaps for us. Skyler, Treadwell. So I don't think you're going to see it like you did in years past, same thing in the linebacker room, where we have the same guys on the field the whole game. I think that's going to help us in the long run, stay healthy, but also, just be able to finish games better. You had Anthony Butler basically never came off the field for us last year. And in hindsight, probably should have tried to get him off on some of those third downs, but he was could run everything for us and was a safety blanket, kind of in the same way Scruggs was. So I think guys being completely bought into their role on this team and understanding, how that's going to pay dividends for all of us, and I think our kids are at that point. Is that easy? To say if you can't start this or that, but if at the end of the day that we're going to need everybody to make plays, and young men chose to come here because they wanted to be a part of a championship team, then they have to put their ego aside, and I think we have the right group of young men. I have no doubt that are going to do that.
Last one from me, then I'll get to you, Damian. Skylar Thomas, I think you mentioned him there briefly. Transfer. I mean, how much does that help in what you're saying there as far as build that depth, and what have been your early thoughts of him?
He's been a difference maker. He's probably the fastest kid, not probably on our defense. He is, and so having a guy that can play man, that can blitz off the edge, be a jack of all trades, is really valuable, and that's really what he is kind of a Swiss Army knife, so to speak, in our defense. And so being able to be multiple up front and having different ways to attack protections and dictate offenses, you got to have a guy who can do a little bit of everything at that spot. And so really excited for what he's brought to the table, and his development from spring to right now I think has been huge.
Let's go to Damian Sordelab from the News in Advance.
Scott, you look at the transformation of this defense, and you look at the guys that you brought in through the transfer portal, and adding that type of experience in Deron Lowe at cornerback. You mentioned Skyler there at safety. Then at linebacker, hit a home run last year with Anthony, but you bring in Rashard Harding, a Story Jackson, and how much has that helped, accelerate the growth of this defense in these types of veterans who can come in, understand their role, and really help this defense, fill out that depth?
Well, I think from guys that have gotten here, obviously there's a learning curve. They've played a lot of snaps, but not in our system. So, for the spring for us, Damian, those guys, you really couldn't see. Story's kind of in that mold right now. You really can't see where he's going to be at because there's still so much growth ahead of him, right? Like Aaron Pierre has played, I use Aaron for an example. He's played 1 million snaps on defense last year and also took all the practice reps to get ready in games. So that guy has taken such a large volume of snaps. And so like a guy like that this spring, or this fall camp, you're trying to get Story those reps to get him caught up. So a lot of those new guys, it's getting them caught up within the system. But from a football standpoint and playing a lot of snaps in football IQ, and we've tried to be, and I think we've done a really good job with those guys, be very intentional on the type of young men that we've brought into our program. Guys that truly want to be a part of a team, guys that want to win. Obviously, they have personal goals. They have desires to play at the highest level like a lot of these young men do, but making sure that we've been very clear on the front end, that they're going to have to become us. We're not going to become them. And they have to buy into the culture and how we're going to do things here. And credit to all those guys. They've all done it up until this point. And excited to see what all those guys can do and the value that they can add on the field on game day.
Let's go to John Manson from A Sea of Red.
Coach, we talked about it, last year, and I think it's continued, but your defensive line continues to, maybe be the strength of the defense and probably the deepest unit on the entire team. And this year you got basically everybody back. Do you look for them to continue to kind of, be the tip of the spear, as Coach Aldridge says, and continue to lead your defensive unit and, be able to do it with even more depth than you had last year and the last 2 years?
Yes, we definitely have more depth. I expect us to be really talented up front. That's where everything starts. If you can't stop the run, then it's a tough day. So, obviously I think we've got a chance to be really special, get a lot of guys on the field there because we do. We have so much talent on the D-line. It definitely starts up front. And, I think as those big guys go, we go. And, that's, absolutely dominating up front, being able to collapse the pocket, makes a lot of things a lot easier for us on the back end. So, for sure, John, I think everything starts up front when you talk about playing great defense.
Along those lines with the defensive line, you just added a guy, Jay Hardy, a couple weeks ago, an Auburn transfer. Seen him out there. I mean, big kid. How quickly do you think he can work his way into the mix?
He's got a lot of talent. We got to get him into shape. He knows that. But I'm excited to see what the future holds. Whether that's this year or next year, remains to be seen. But the talent's definitely there. I think the attitude is there. We just got to get him in shape. I think once Coach Dom, has some, and his staff have some time to get with him, I think he's got a really high ceiling.
Taking questions for Flames defensive coordinator Scott Symons. If anybody has anything else, feel free. Brad Butler from Liberty Flames Sports Network, go ahead.
Hey, Scott, you mentioned Dom and the off-season work. Watching them the last couple of practices, looks like there's incredible advancement in the speed, particularly to the place to the edge. Is that just a condition of fresh legs, or are we seeing a real change here?
I think a little bit of both. I mean, you got to recruit speed. You can only make slow guys so fast, but so much faster. Excuse me. But I do think what they do, what Coach Dom and his staff do, as far as speed development and mechanics and some of those things. I think they've done a phenomenal job. As a defensive staff, we look at it. We're going to try to recruit fast guys. We're not going to worry. Sometimes we're going to look at their frame and say, okay, this kid maybe is a 150-pound corner in high school. Okay, but we know once we put him in our training table with Miss Danielle, with Coach Dom, with Ryan, with their staff, BJ, that those guys are going to be able to, over a 1 to 2 year period of time, they've shown us how they've been able to develop guys and put weight on them. So it's a premium on us to, recruit guys that can run, as a staff and then let Coach Dom and his crew develop them that way.
Are you allowed to give us some insight into their 40 times or other times or some of the metrics you've used to gauge that?
Yeah, I mean, like as far as particulars on what guys have run or just what we're looking for?
Well, no, as an overall defensive unit, have you seen the times go down as a result?
Yeah, yes, we definitely have. They have I don't know all the science behind it, like 1080 sprint or something that they use, and it calculates all the different science and speed, velocity. I'd let Coach Dom speak on that. But I know looking from how they measured it, 6 weeks, and then we got, the end of summer and looked at those numbers to see how they'd increased. It was pretty awesome to see. So, we want to recruit guys that have the athletic ability and the twitch to run, and then let Coach Dom develop the mechanics and those aspects on some of those guys, So, but yeah, I don't know, Brad, the exact, without having a sheet in front of me on it, but they're pretty big and strong and fast. So.
Let's take two more here real quick. Let's get to John, and then we'll wrap up with Damian.
Heard a lot about Ahmad Walker, even going back to the spring. True freshman guy that's come in and seems to turn heads there at linebacker. I mean, I'm assuming this is a guy that you think can play this true freshman season and provide depth for your unit there at linebacker.
Yeah, John, I think he could start for us. That remains to be seen. We've got a great position battle going in that room. I think we're going to play a lot of guys. So once again, whether he starts or not, we'll see how the rest of camp plays out. We chart their missed assignments. We chart their production every single day. These guys know. One thing when you don't have a lot of depth, it's hard to create a culture of competition, because I think naturally as humans we become complacent. But when you've got competition every single day, every single week throughout the season, there's just a different urgency, that you get, because everybody's battling for a job. And so I love that about our room right now. He is extremely confident. You know, he was an alpha dog of his high school team that won a state championship, one of the best programs in Georgia, and he's brought that confidence with him. I love that about him. He's got to continue to grow on the field and in some of those areas that we've talked about, just playing, you know, trusting the game and learning the defense and playing within the framework of the defense and understanding when it's your play to make and when you just got to do your job and some of those things. So, but he's had some, you know, he's had some big time plays this fall camp, and I'm excited to see him, you know, let loose on Saturday. But once again, we've only tackled live once, so, you know, I mean, you know, when we go live a little bit Saturday, that's going to tell a lot about a lot of these guys, you know.
Go ahead, Damien.
Scott, you guys benefited quite a bit with the super seniors coming back. I counted 6 of them, ranging from, you know, the defensive line all the way back through the secondary. And how much are those guys going to help in terms of, you know, establishing the culture and allowing these younger, talented players to not be thrust into playing immediately, but allow them to gradually learn the speed of the game, learn the system, and, you know, when they're ready to get in.
Yeah, I think that's huge, and it's a great point. You know, we've like I'll use Trayshawn Clark for example. Trayshawn Clark, I know he's not a super senior, but you know, or Ralph's, who's a super senior. You know, those guys that have played a lot of snaps for us. You know, I mean, I'm really not too concerned. I want to make sure that they're sharp and they're clean in practice, but you know, those guys have proven they've run this system now. I mean, the expectation is that they should know what to do on every single play. I mean, we've played 20-something games with those guys. So I'm not saying they're not ever going to make mistakes, but that allows us in practice to still get more reps from some of those young guys, continue to develop them, and then be able to find a role. And I think that's the big thing that we're really trying to be proactive about on defense is how can we find a role for guys that can add value. Maybe it's not a first down role for this young man yet, but maybe it's a third down package. Maybe it's in a very specific situation. Maybe it's goal line defense, whatever it is, but create a role that they can own and understand that, yeah, you might be a 2, you might be a 3, but you got to be ready for this role. And then you know how it goes over the course of the season. I mean, knock on wood, we'd love to stay healthy over the course of the whole season, but that's odds are that typically doesn't happen. Guys are going to get nicked up here and there, and so then you're able to gradually, you know, bring those guys along. So when their number's called, hopefully we have them ready.